Hello everyone, it's RASA von Werder from the University of Mother God Church, and what I want to do right now is to talk about the souls in purgatory. I have a book called Theater of Justice, Celebrity Souls Appear, and here is a picture of Errol Flynn, who was one of my first celebrity soul that I know of. And this is one of my models, but she's a symbol of Anna Nicole Smith. These two people I minister to in purgatory. And Anna Nicole Smith, by the way, was only there for a short record number of days compared to any other person that I have ever helped in purgatory. She was only there for 64 days, and that was a record. Errol Flynn was in for about over 24 years. On the back cover, I have other souls that I helped. Frank Sinatra, Elvis Presley, Dean Martin, Dr. Richard Atkins, Rudolph NUREYEV, the ballet dancer, and Richard Pryor, and George C. Scott, who played Patton, Timothy McVeigh, the famous for being a terrorist, and Anthony Quinn. So I'm going to read to you about the souls in purgatory. They are one of my favorite, if not the favorite, it's my favorite ministry. My favorite ministry. How to serve them, and I teach you how to help souls in purgatory. Why should you help souls in purgatory? How does it help you? It's beautifully illustrated with the great Julia Schnorr von Karlsfeld is the artist. I used his pictures throughout, and others as well. And Gustave Doré, he's famous, very, very, very famous, and many others, many other beautiful images that I got out of places. And you receive Holy Communion. Oh yeah, I started to say, what good does it do you to help souls in purgatory? Okay, charity is what determines your place in heaven. The more charity you generate in your life and in your soul, the more charity you generate, the higher will be your place in heaven. They're all different stratas of heaven. The greater your charity, the greater your vision will be, the greater your bliss, your joy, and your ecstasy will be in heaven. Two people that I know of who were torturers in my life are in one of the very lowest places in heaven. And when I went to see them, my mother and my brother, I went to see the two of them. They were in their light where they were compared to where I was so dim that it was almost like I was on the stage with Jesus in the brightest light, like the stars. I was actually with Pope Pius XII, but he was a symbol of Jesus. And they were in like a balcony of the theater where there was hardly any light. So my light was prodigious, and their light was minimal. Why? Lack of charity. Lack of charity. So that means their joy, their bliss, and their ecstasy is not as great as those who had more charity. Okay, so through a process of effort, I came to understand, through studying the saints, that helping the souls in purgatory is the greatest act of charity that one can do. If you reason it out, it makes sense. But of course, you have to follow your life the way God guides you, teaches you, and commands you. So, for example, there are two kinds of states of life which the Catholics explain. One is the contemplative life, and one is the active life. The active life is when you go into the world to minister. And the contemplative life is like people who stay in the convent or the monastery, and they pray and they do things quietly. They don't go out into the world. So even though the contemplative life is considered to be a higher level, however, if God calls you into the active life, you should be there. That's the right place for you. Even though the contemplative is higher, you may not be suitable for a contemplative life. You may be suitable for an active life, and so that is where you should be, in the place that is suitable for you. And again, you might not be suitable for the active life. You want to be in the, you think you should, but it may not be the right place for you. You follow what I mean? And so by the same token, serving the souls in purgatory, which I do as a full-time ministry, it worked for me. It was the ministry. I've done many kinds of ministries. I preached on the street for months. I was a stripper for God who dances to save men's souls. You know, I did that ministry. You know, I've done prayer ministries. But my favorite that I love, that makes me happy, is the Ministry to Purgatory. They appear to me mostly in dreams. Once in a while they appear to me in visions. Vision is, you know, an extreme dream, higher than a dream. It's you know, more vivid than a dream. And I've been in purgatory once in bilocation to see my father, and I've seen whatever. So I'm going to read to you about what is purgatory, and for those of you who don't believe in it, please pay attention. Well, here is a prelude to that. I read the prelude. How I say the Holy Mass for the souls in purgatory. How and why I say the Holy Mass for them. In late 1981, RASA was working trying to get women into the priesthood. She could not get anywhere with the women because most of them sided with the Catholic Church. The ones who agreed that women should be priests were not willing to fight or help RASA. She became exasperated. She thought, maybe I'm wrong and the Catholic Church is right. She prayed to the Lord, Lord, do you want women to be priests or do you want women not to be priests? Give me a sign. The next day she was all alone in the old Gothic church for the early Mass. A never-before-seen priest walked up to the altar and began saying Mass. He was young, middle-aged, with black-rimmed glasses, attractive. There was a look upon his face of kind benevolence. When it came time for Holy Communion, RASA walked from the back of the church where she was to the altar rail, knelt down, put her head low, and waited for the approach of the priest. Minutes passed. She looked up. The priest was standing still behind the altar. In a loving and gallant way, he beckoned RASA to come up to the altar. His hands were outstretched and palms open, as if to say, come, like that. RASA stood up slowly, trying to understand the meaning of this call. When she got up to the altar, the priest inferred by gesture for her to stand next to him, at which time he gave her the body of Christ. Then he offered her the blood of Christ from the chalice, which at that time was not always given to the public. RASA drank the blood of Christ and walked back slowly to her seat. By the way, this was behind the altar. that he called me, with him, behind the altar. Rasa drank the blood of Christ and walked back slowly to her seat, not feeling the floor underneath her. The majesty and awe of the situation had put her into a trance. The Mass ended and Rasa walked outside. Suddenly she understood. It was the Lord! He had answered her prayer. He wanted women priests. You see? You understand? That priest, I had never seen him before or since. He was Jesus. Usually we had 2 or 3 other priests that I knew regularly, because I went to Mass every day then, at that time, for several years. And all of a sudden here was this brand new priest I had never seen. My first, obviously it was a visiting priest. But he was Jesus. Remember in Damascus when the guys walked? The disciples walked with this guy, and the guy walked with them and told them this and told them that and told them that. And then they got to where they were going and they sat down to have a meal, and Jesus and the man broke the bread, and suddenly they realized he was Jesus. What does that mean? It was the Spirit of Jesus. To be continued.